Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, HKB from all over the East Coast. East Coast Jack's over in the great old town of Erie, but kind of the East Coast. You guys all welcome in. A little bit delayed, both time-wise and date-wise, here on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Sun is shining through, as you can see in many of our backdrops. John is dead for all we know. I don't know. He was down in Florida. John was soaking in the great rays of the great Sunshine State. So yeah, maybe he's a little sunburnt, a little fatigued from his trip, but nonetheless, we're gonna break into what has been a crazy week. You know, we were gonna go live Monday with John being down in Florida, me being a little bit under the weather. We didn't know what was gonna happen, you know, and we decided that. Yeah, let's take a couple of days. We've earned it. We've been working ourselves down to the bone. Let's take a few days. And, oh, boy, I don't think that could have been a better decision. We've been spamming our group chats. Boys, what a couple of days that has been – I don't know if it's technically the NFL free agency. I think it's still like the legal tampering period, whatever they were calling it. But what a couple of days, man.
A lot happened. And I agree. I'm so glad we didn't shoot Monday because – it felt like every hour there was another move happening.
There's probably going to be moves going on nonstop throughout this one. So we'll be kind of jumping around, seeing all this. The biggest thing I want to look at, ESPN about a half an hour ago released a poll. And Corey and Biggs, I really want to get your opinion because this is probably the scenario that you guys are in. Which quarterback would you rather start for your favorite team in 2025? Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson? And at the moment, that's kind of who – both the Giants and the Steelers are going to get. So both teams are going to get one or the other, it seems like. So if you had to pick, which one would you want to be your starter?
Man, I don't know because Russ is a little bit younger. So I feel like if you want long-term success, if there's any success in Pittsburgh, then I guess you stay with Russ. But if you just want to go get a longer than a wild card run for a year or two, then I guess you go with Aaron. But I don't know. I'm still torn because, you know, Aaron had a decent season with the Jets, but Russ started off so good and then the fall off was just insurmountable how awful he was. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know what Biggsy thinks, but.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm pretty hardcore on the Rodgers train right now, just because neither of them are going to be a long-term option. I hope we draft somebody pretty high next year in the draft. It'll be a good QB class. But I think Rodgers, his game is always – he was not as mobile as Russ used to be. So now that he's older, I think him losing any mobility he has doesn't really impact him as much as it is Russ. So – and we got GP and DK. Somebody's got to throw the ball a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, Biggsy. The Steelers, boys, I know we've been blowing up the group chat with a bunch of all free agency news, but especially anything for Pittsburgh. How about DK Metcalf from the Pacific Northwest to the Steel City, and then not only getting traded, but signing a 5-year extension to stay with the Steelers? So it seems like Pickens and DK is going to be the long-term 1-2 punch in Pittsburgh.
And I'm fine with that as long as they don't, you know, have fights and scrap, you know, during games. I mean, you know, John put it on his Instagram story tagging me, and I said, you know, we don't want to call it like UFC Fight Island, but, you know, hopefully it doesn't end up that way.
It's going to end up being a WWE tag team, dude. They're going to hit combo moves against each other, against the opponents. Probably the refs as well. But no, I mean, we talked about this time and time again, how much Pittsburgh really needs, you know, an offensive weapon. And it's great that they didn't have to spend their first round pick on it. Now it seems that they can shift their focus to building up that offensive line. And then as well, Najee Harris leaving is huge. Him going to the Chargers is a big loss. And now they replaced him with Kenneth Gainwell, who is a fine number 2. I don't think Jalen Warren's or anything. So this is probably the year that they go and get another running back, and they go by committee. You know what I mean? And they see what they have in the rookie. They see if Gainwell could break out as a starter. They see if Warren could really be a starter. But yeah, by trading for Metcalf, I really think it positions Pittsburgh to to go into draft day with a clear focus in mind of building up that O-line.
I really feel like I kind of hate if we went O-line again, to be
Really?
honest. I feel like our O-line is in a pretty all right spot. I mean, I think Broderick Jones finally should hopefully be set for a season in the same position. And then guard-wise, I think we're all right. Zach Frazier's a great center. So I'm still really looking cornerback. I know we got Darius Slay, and he's a good player on that outside, but he's old.
Well, unofficially, you have Darius Slay.
We should have Darius Slay.
You by the end of free agency, you will most likely have Darius Slay, which I think is huge for the backfield, or not for the secondary. And I think it really benefits, developing the younger guys. I still think Joey Porter Jr. has a lot to give. I think by having someone like Slay alongside him, just in that, DB's room, it's going to help him develop as a player. I mean, there's a reason that Pittsburgh drafted him. It wasn't, they didn't spend high just because of his name. Like there was a ton of talent there. And I think Slay might be able to help bring some of that out. So Pittsburgh, once they get their quarterback, still yet to be seen who they will bring in. But Pittsburgh is in a really, really good spot for the future. I know, Corey, you're saying the standard's the standard. The 2025 season starts now, but just after the Super Bowl. But I think the standard might change a little bit. Is it still a little too early to say that?
I do think they've bent the standard a little bit. I think they actually were aggressive in free agency, which I'm happy about, because I thought they were just going to do the bare minimum like they usually do. But I think, again, it all depends on who's going to be the quarterback, who's going to be our sheriff, who's going to lead this team. I think that's all going to come down to that.
I think, we've been knowing Rodgers has been the name that's been thrown around for a while. We talked about, who you'd rather have. I think either way, you're in a better position than you were last year. Even if you bring back Russ, he does have a little bit of connection with DK, a year or two with him, but still some form of connection with Metcalf. And besides down the stretch, because once they clinched their winning season, they fell apart. But Russ did have flashes of, kind of having something left in the tank. I think you would still rather have Rodgers, but I think as long as, you're not bringing in, I don't know who's still available at quarterback besides those two. I know Cam said there is apparently a couple of clamorings about AR-15 being sent over to Pittsburgh. I don't know how much traction that'll really have. I still think it's too early for the Colts to move on from him.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly where I saw that from. I think I want to quote ML Football, but I'm honestly completely unsure. But even I saw a clip yesterday from the Pat McAfee show. I think they were all talking about that. It's kind of like a setup deal. It's and I've seen people joking about it on Twitter too. But it's beat Daniel Jones or you're done. That's the bar that you have to set is beat Daniel Jones or you're done.
Yeah, and I think Jones definitely him going to Indianapolis is huge. It definitely puts the pressure on AR-15 to prove, because I think Jones still has some left in the tank. I think the Giants. Their line is garbage. They let Saquon walk. They brought in Malik Neighbors, which was great, but I mean, that's a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. You know what I mean? That's not doing anything. Not going to say he's an ultra talent by any means. But if AR-15 loses it, this could be the chance for Daniel Jones to kind of have that resurgence with a new franchise, as we've seen, Baker Mayfield, as we've seen with Geno Smith, as we've seen with Seattle's new quarterback and Sam Darnold, who just got an absolute bag. I'm curious what Seattle is cooking. They trade away Geno Smith. They trade away DK Metcalf. They cut Tyler Lockett. So all that's left of that offense now, before the Darnold signing, was JSN, Charbonnet, and Kenneth Walker. There wasn't a whole lot going on with that offense. So I'm curious to see where the rest of their offseason is going to go. Are they going to try and land someone through trade? Are they going to try and build through the draft? Because we've talked about with a couple teams, offensive line is a huge need for them. Their O-line has not been great, but also it's JSN, and that's kind of it when it comes to receivers. You got to go and get a talented receiver, whether that's, making a trade with your division rival the Rams. I don't see Kupp getting traded to Seattle, but whether it's that, whether it's going through the draft, possibly moving up to get a top talent at receiver. So Seattle's in desperate need because Sam Darnold had a great year, but you also look at the talent that was around him. You had Aaron Jones. You had a good O-line. You had Jefferson and Addison and Hawkinson, all the sins. So Seattle definitely has to bring in something to provide Darnold with some help offensively.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, before they got Sam Darnold, I'm thinking like, what the heck are they doing? Are they going to rely on Sam Howell to lead this team? I was like, it was a head scratcher at first, but then when I saw Darnold sign, I'm like, all right, that's I see what you're doing.
And like, look, I like the move, because you could tell Geno Smith was out. I don't know if I like the number they gave up, and it does depend on how much I'm going to like the move with what they do the rest of the offseason. I think if they stay complacent and really don't address, building up the offense, you're not going to like the move at all. Darnold's going to not put up the numbers he put up this year. But, I mean, you saw when you put some talent around him, he had a ton of success. Interesting to see because it is kind of a different offense. It is a different feel. And you're not playing in the Dome. You are playing in Seattle, where the weather isn't atrocious. But, in your Dome, you don't have to worry about, weather affecting you for the most part. How about Darnold's former team, though? The Minnesota Vikings having themselves a great free agency. They re-signed Byron Murphy. They brought back Aaron Jones, which is I did not really see that happen. I really thought Jones was going to walk in free agency. But them bringing back Aaron Jones is a great get. They built up the interior line with Wolf Rise and Ryan Kelly, both from Indianapolis. So, chemistry is going to be huge, especially that offensive line wasn't great apart from Christian Darrisaw. Now you get a ton of chemistry on the interior line to keep your guy up. They bring in a sneaky signing in Isaiah Rodgers. Jonathan Allen for 3 years. Like, they really made the right moves for where what you had in the skill players. What you had in Jefferson and Addison. The defense was very underrated last year under B-Flow's first year. KOC is one of the best coaches. J.J. McCarthy's coming into a great spot. I mean, the biggest concern offensively was that offensive line. I think even if Jones was to walk, you could have, went through the draft to get a good running back. I believe they still have Cam Akers. So like there was still some stuff offensively, apart from the O-line that you were really happy with. Now that they address the O-line, let J.J. McCarthy go out there and let him sling it, dude. I mean, I know at Michigan it wasn't an offense where he's going out there and throwing it 40 times a game. I don't know if he has the talent. I think he kind of has to prove that he has the talent to do that. But you saw what KOC has done with all the quarterbacks that he has had. And like Sam Darnold having that resurgent year, I think McCarthy's going to have something similar.
I think I'm going to have to disagree on that. I think it's going to be a little bit tough, especially like what you were talking about, Michigan. Shout out the boys, but I mean, it's like he really wasn't slinging out the ball. I think moving on from Sam Darnold was in the Vikings' best interest, but having J.J. McCarthy and like, especially with still having Justin Jefferson, like that's going to be tough to build, especially for a guy who's not really known for slinging the ball out. Like Sam Darnold was able to get it done. It's going to take it's going to take at least a couple of weeks for that chemistry to settle and to even see if they can get that 40 ball to get going. But it's going to be tough, especially with those two.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's not going to be day one, he's putting perfect passes on the spot, but it's tough to not have success with that talent around you. So I think that's the biggest thing, having so much talent around you. And you might have to scheme differently, especially right off the rip. McCarthy was known for making, these safe passes at Michigan because passing wasn't the forefront of Michigan's offense. So maybe it is, scheming these shorter routes, these slants, these out routes, these in routes, these little, I would say dink and dime passes, but Addison and Jefferson can make stuff happen after the catch as well. So maybe initially, earlier on in the game, you're going to have him kind of, work these short passes, and that's where the defense is going to creep up, and that's where you have faith in McCarthy to develop as a deep ball passer. The defense is going to sync up to try and take away the short route, and that's where you have Jefferson break away on a go route. You have Addison break away on a go route, and they're going to make him pay. I definitely think, too, working on this offseason, I think for sure that McCarthy is going to get better at the deep ball. It's great that he won the national championship. It's great that, he was the quarterback of that team, but he also knows that if he wants to perform at the next level, you can't just be a handoff merchant. You have to make the 5-yard throws. You have to make those consistently. But you also have to have the ability to at least give your receivers a chance if you're going downfield. You can't just, only throw 5-yard balls, 3-yard balls. Like you have to take some of these shots. And I think that's where McCarthy is going to develop. It may not be right away. Hell, it might not be this season, but it's definitely going to be something that we see in the future. Boys, you got anything?
I just pitched in.
I mean, I think if Sam Darnold can have that much success in the Vikings offense, I don't really see a reason why J.J. McCarthy can't. I mean, on the one hand, yeah, we didn't see too much of his ability to really drive the ball downfield at Michigan, but on the other hand, he didn't have to. It wasn't really asked of him too often. So, I mean, and he's had a year to sit, obviously with the injury. So he's been able to learn, get some time in that offense. And, I mean, I think with the weapons and the O-line, I mean, he'll be in a really good spot to succeed.
Yeah, for sure. I think I don't think Minnesota's done. I think they're going to, add a couple of depth pieces. I don't know what the rest of their quarterback room looks like currently. I know Daniel Jones was there at one point last year. Unfortunately for Minnesota, Jones will no longer be a part of their team unless they want to make a trade. But I just think McCarthy's in a really good spot. And it may not be this season that we see him, fully emergent. You've heard my concerns in the past too, because of that lack of experience in such a pass-heavy offense. But I think having good protection up front, and even the protection in the backfield of having that ability to give it to Aaron Jones, someone who had another really good year as a good back. And I just think McCarthy is going to be set up to have success. I am interested to see how aggressive out of the gate KOC is scheming up McCarthy. Because we talked about it. He is very good at hitting these short passes, but that isn't necessarily the offense that Minnesota likes. So I'm curious on how aggressive and how reliant KOC is going to be on McCarthy's development as a deep ball passer.
And I was thinking too, I wonder how Vikings fans feel. Like I would be excited because McCarthy's a great talent, but they had one of the more unexpected seasons. And it's like you got rid of Darnold. And now, I wonder if they feel a little anxious because they're throwing in this young quarterback into a good situation. But is he really going to propel the offense just like Sam Darnold did? But it'll be interesting to see.
I think Minnesota fans have to take this. I wouldn't say take it lightly, but you can't, be fully invested on Minnesota's going 14-3 again, and having a real shot for the division because it was such an outlier season. That's not what the expectation was beginning of the year. You were hoping to see what you could get with Sam Darnold, maybe be in the playoff mix. He won 14 games. You know what I mean? Like that was not the expectation. That also can't be the expectation for this year. I understand that it happened last year. It's a different quarterback, a different play style. With that Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy's play styles, you look at them through college, and McCarthy hasn't played in the NFL, but through Darnold's NFL career, they're not the same in the slightest. There's little aspects here or there, but they're not the same passer. So I'm very interested to see this Minnesota team. I think they're going to be unbelievably talented. I'm curious. I think the biggest question mark is McCarthy, and finding out, was he worth the first round price tag they paid? Is he going to be able to bounce back from the injury? And is he going to be able to perform at the NFL level? So it's primarily just circling around him. But I am very curious to see how that goes.
Yeah, I think especially with looking at how especially with both NFC North and the NFC East, the NFC North has gotten incredibly better over the last 4 years. I think that's pretty evident. But both of those divisions now having to go this year up against each other. Minnesota, I believe they have, thankfully, the Eagles at home in Minnesota. So that takes off a little bit of stress, but I feel like their ceiling for them in a good season for them would be that 10-7, the 9-8, or even just an 8-9 record. It's not going to be easy to get that at all, especially with a rookie quarterback changing it up, especially trying to learn that system. But you never know what's going on those sidelines, especially this past year, what he's learned from rehabbing and trying to figure out KOC's scheme by himself. Like it's gonna be a tough one to watch. It's really good. It's not gonna be easy to call. Not like anyone was able to call 14-3, but it's gonna be. I think if the Vikings fans can get to that 9-8, I think that's gonna be a winning season for them.
No, for sure. I definitely don't think it's it's going to be a cakewalk, but I don't know if the ceiling is necessarily 10-7 or like around that like 500 area. I think that's kind of where they're going to be at. I think their ceiling could be, another 12 or 13 win season if McCarthy does develop like that. I also think their floor could be a 6 or 7 win season if McCarthy really struggles, injuries kind of derail them. Like there's a lot of things that could go wrong, but I think if McCarthy is half of what Minnesota is expecting him to be, they'll be about a 500 team, maybe sniffing the playoffs. You mentioned that they have Philadelphia at home. They have a lot of teams that, if they're on the road, these are tough games. They have Philadelphia at home. They have the Commanders at home. Baltimore, Cincinnati. Like, those are tough games. If you're on the road, those are unbelievably hard games. And if you look at the road games, it's not much easier. It's never easy to play in Pittsburgh. It's never easy to play in Seattle. The Chargers, I mean, they don't have home fans, but the Chargers are still a very solid team. But, you look at the games they're playing at home. If home field advantage, and you see how, the Vikings fans throw up the skulls, they're having, they make a big impact in these games, it definitely swings their schedule a little bit, for sure. Moving on, though, we'll move to the team that eliminated Minnesota from the postseason, the Los Angeles Rams. There was a bunch of rumors about Matthew Stafford wanting to get traded, all this, that, and the other. He did restructure his deal, so he will spend at least next season with the Los Angeles Rams, as well as he's going to have a shiny new toy, not brand new in the sense of age and I would say talent, but Davante Adams joining this Rams offense, seemingly putting an end to the Cooper Kupp era in Los Angeles. Puka Nacua did go on the St. Brown Brothers podcast and say he wasn't going to give up number 17, not even for $2 million. And then 12 hours later, he gave up the number 17 to Davante Adams. So I'm very curious on what Adams' price was for that number. But, I mean, Cooper Kupp had been banged up the last few years, and when he was on the field, he was great. I think Adams has more in the tank, at least talent-wise, than Kupp does. So pairing those two up is going to be absolutely terrifying. I don't think this Rams offense declined, at least from a skill position standpoint.
No, I agree. I think Adams is a perfect fit, like with Stafford and, just that offense. It's going to be really exciting to see what they do. Hopefully they could live up to kind of the standard that they're setting. When you see Davante Adams on your team, people expect a lot from the offense.
100%. I mean, you saw how poorly it went with the Jets this year. Davante Adams was supposed to be the savior that both John Downey and the entirety of the Jets fandom was hoping for. And it didn't end up being the case. And I wouldn't say it was as much of, Adams or even the players' fault as it was coaching and front office. But hopefully that'll be what the Rams need to kind of put them over the edge. They beat up on Minnesota. They had a good run against Philadelphia. They had a really good season. The year that they were kind of supposed to be, I would say bad, but there wasn't like a true expectation of, with the defense kind of being unproven, a lot of them being younger guys, you didn't know what the expectation was. And I think, they were excellent. I think they could 100% win that division again. I think Seattle has to figure out what they're doing offensively around Darnold. I think Arizona is still probably a year or two away from being, taken really seriously. The Niners are really banged up, and I think, they're going to get healthier. But you saw, like, injuries can quickly derail that team. And it could 100% be the case again in 2025.
Yeah, like you said, I think the Rams are heavy favorites to win the NFC West, at least in my eyes, especially with how many guys the 49ers lost in free agency.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like Greenlaw, Charvarius Ward, like all of them are gone. And then Seattle's got an uphill battle. It'll be interesting to see how that offense works. Probably not too well, but
yeah, and the Niners really haven't been aggressive in free agency either. The only main move, Demarcus Robinson, I guess is, a decent move. And realistically, they don't need to do a whole lot. You still have McCaffrey. You still have, Ayuk. I don't know exactly where his timetable lands right now, but he'll be back probably in the early half of next season, if not by, the beginning of the year. Ricky Purcell was good. Kittle's still one of the best tight ends in football. Defensively, they're still very sound. So yeah, it's still, they did lose a lot and they haven't been super aggressive, but this Niners team is never going to be out of it. The only thing that will ever derail them is injuries. So it is curious to see how aggressive they'll be the rest of the way. But another team who has really surprised me in free agency, I really didn't see them bringing him back. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Chris Godwin, man. We talked about how much you guys wanted Godwin to go to Pittsburgh, and now you got your guy in Metcalf. But I'm really surprised that they were able to get that connection. They retained Levante David, and I know he had a terrible tenure with the Jets, but they brought in Hassan Reddick, which I think is a nice little addition to the defense. I think anyone who goes to the Jets, their career goes to die, at least for a little bit. But yeah, I really think that the couple little moves that they made it's proven that they're willing to do what it takes to win, especially in a division where the Saints are in no man's land. The Falcons, they thought Kirk Cousins was their guy. Clearly not their guy. I think Penix needs some more experience as well. And I think, Carolina is trending in the right direction. They bring in the big they extend J.C. Horn to a massive contract. They were supposed to bring in Milton Williams before he ended up flipping over to New England. I still think Carolina's a little bit away, but so it's really the Bucs division to win 100%. Like that is their division through and through. But they're not worried about winning the division. I think they're really trying to make that push. So I'm curious to see what they do the rest of the way out when it comes to free agency and when it comes to the draft. But I think Tampa Bay is going to be right in that mix again next season.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, go ahead, Ken.
This is the issues with Google Meet. Anyways, no, it's like I'm really excited to see how they even develop without Liam Cohen there on the offense too. But even bringing in a guy like Hassan Reddick, that completely I wouldn't say shocked me. It was a welcome surprise. I think it was the right move for both him because I think we all know he was not happy to be on the Jets. I think he was honestly pretty depressed, and then it's not helping that the Eagles then go and win a Super Bowl the year that they got rid of you. But no, even re-signing a guy like Godwin, I mean, Mike Evans is going to stay consistent like always. Like that team's going to be a lot of fun to watch again.
No, 100%. The Tampa Bay Bucs are always they're always very entertaining to watch, especially with like the emergence of Bucky Irving. I think he was a great addition to the backfield. I think Rachaad White had kind of had a down year and he kind of lost part of his role. But I think White still has some left in the tank to offer. So yeah, I'm very curious to see where Tampa Bay continues to go, especially saying like the free agency class. I wouldn't say it isn't stacked, but it definitely isn't one of the stronger free agency classes, especially saying most of the guys have been picked up or traded for. But there's definitely a couple guys. I think Trey Hendrickson, him not being a free agent but still wanting a trade is huge. I think even though he isn't in the prime of his career, Von Miller is another guy who he's going to go ring chasing. I'm curious where he ends up wanting to go, but he's another guy who really needs it. And even like the receivers, I saw some. If it was like 2019, this would be the greatest receiver class ever. It's Keenan Allen. It's Diggs off an injury. It's Amari Cooper after a bad year. So it's not the greatest thing, but there's still plenty of talent out there to really continue to help develop these teams. Before we know it, season's going to start. I can't wait for that. But there's still a lot of time between now and then, so they do have to fill out one team, and it sucks because it's my team. One team who has not been aggressive in free agency is the Philadelphia Eagles. They have done. I wouldn't say nothing. I know part of it was they were going to try and trade for Myles Garrett, and then for no logical reason, because Cleveland is not going to win anytime soon.
They got a Super Bowl winning quarterback now. I don't know what you're talking about.
They do have a
Oh,
Super
that's
Bowl winning
right.
quarterback in Kenny Pickett.
And they
But
traded
they,
another Super Bowl winning quarterback,
no,
Kenny Pickett.
but they signed Myles Garrett to all this money. But seriously, Philadelphia has been, I would say, quiet, but not as aggressive as I think many people thought. You know, they extend Saquon Barkley. They bring back Zach Bond, which I think Bond was the biggest priority. They're still in talks with Becton, but they haven't, done anything with that. And obviously, everything with them players leaving. Josh Sweat going to Arizona, Milton Williams going to New England. The rumors about Slay heading to Pittsburgh. Again, that hasn't been official. It's not official yet, but there's still a lot. Sending C.J. Gardner-Johnson down to the Texans. Now, I will say, I am not a fan of giving up Gardner-Johnson because you look at the 2 years he was in Philadelphia. Both years they went 14-3. Both years they were in the Super Bowl. But I do kind of like the return of Kenyon Green. Now, he has been – we've bashed him more than once. I know at least I have. He has been unbelievably bad. But he's gonna start going to Stoutland University. And you saw what happened, to a guy like Mekhi Becton, a former first-rounder who was able to learn under the tutelage of Stoutland, and he has a great career. I think maybe the same thing could happen for Green. But Philadelphia has been very, very, very quiet in free agency. I think they might be in the mix for Miller. I also think they could be looking downfield, so looking at the guys they're going to have to extend. They're going to want to extend Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. In a few years or a year or two after that, they're going to want to extend DeJean and Mitchell. So you want to make sure you have your cap space for that. So odds are they're probably going to be very aggressive through the draft. And you saw how that worked out this year with Hunt, with Mitchell, with DeJean. So I think that's definitely kind of where it's going to go. There's been a lot of rumors that Philadelphia might end up cutting ties with Goddard because he does have such a big cap hit. Which sucks because Goddard has been a nice piece in that offense for a while now. But also, there is a certain someone at the tight end position Philadelphia might be a little aggressive for if they move on from Goddard, potentially trade up and add the likes of Tyler Warren to their already unbelievable offense. I'm not going to say that's what they're going to do. I would love to see it. I think it'd be awesome to see. But even so, I think a lot of it is going to be building through the draft because you have to look downfield for who you're sending. It just sucks, though, because you're seeing all these other teams make these big splashes, and Philadelphia is just not one of those teams, especially after a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm sure some absolutely insane defensive lineman is going to fall to you guys in the first round. Like Michael Williams is somehow going to be there. Keep the Jordan guys going.
That's the thing too. Is it's such a deep edge draft class because that's definitely something Philadelphia is going to want to go and get. And whether that be through free agency or trade, or whether that is in the draft, I really think it will be through the draft because it is such a deep class. And there's guys who are first-round talent who might fall in the first round. There's guys who are probably, early day 2 talent who could fall to day 3. And we've seen it in all these different drafts, and then we look back, how did this guy fall to the 3rd round, 4th round, whatever it is? I think that's where Howie's going to capitalize, and I'm all for it. But again, I do kind of want a shiny new toy, and by extending Bond and or retaining Bond and extending Barkley, I'm not upset with it in Citus, but I want a shiny new toy. I want a shiny new headline for the Philadelphia Eagles.
And Vinny, don't be greedy. I mean, your shiny new toy has been Saquon Barkley. I mean, how many shiny toys do you want?
Look,
as a Pittsburgh fan, I just want one shiny new toy. That's it.
Well, you got your shiny toy.
We did. Yes, we did.
Well, again, Saquon was the shiny new toy from last year, and now I want a shiny new toy this year. Okay.
All right. Hey, that's fine. You do you. Sorny had something to say, Sorny.
I mean, Dallas Goedert has been pretty solid for this team. Like, I kind of hate for him to see him go, and I mean, it just sucks. But then you're also losing guys on defense too.
It does suck. And again, they haven't done anything with Goddard yet. There's just kind of been rumors, but the dead cap that he holds for next year is pretty freaking big. So I think you try to get out of it before you can, because with the extensions needing to come up. I think there's a chance he still, rocks the Philadelphia green one more year. And again, I wouldn't be upset with that.
No, I wouldn't either.
But also, I do see it from the financial side. However, that NFC East is not going to get any easier because these damn Washington Commanders, dude.
Yeah.
They overshot expectations in year one, and they're going for the jugular in year two of the Quinn and Daniels era. They trade for Deebo Samuel. Now, Deebo Samuel, I'm not unbelievably high on, but he adds versatility to that offense for sure. I definitely think there's a ton of talent there. I think if he's willing to accept the role of number 2 behind McLaurin and there's not locker room issues, it'll be a lot better. Deebo Samuel is a diva, so we'll see what happens with that. But bringing in Laramie Tunsil to really bolster up that offensive line, bringing back Bobby Wagner, bringing back Ertz, going out and getting Javon Kinlaw. And again, this is all before the draft. This is before they address any other issues they, need to address. They still have a month to the draft. They still, well over a month actually. I believe it's end of April. They have well over a month to the draft. They still have some movement in free agency. Heck, I could see them, making a big splash and trying to bring in Trey Hendrickson. You know what I mean? Like this is a Commanders team that isn't messing around. New ownership, new coaching, new quarterback. They're going for it all, and rightfully so.
The Commanders are going to be a big threat in the NFC East this year. I'll say it now, and I'll say it forever.
They're going to be a threat forever and then some. Barring injuries, Daniels in his first year was a top 10 quarterback, if not higher. And he's only going to get better with time. And you know what I mean? Like this Commanders team is going to be very dangerous for the foreseeable future.
Just need to figure out a way how to get rid of the curse of that football field. Look to try and get FedEx as soon as possible.
Yeah.
No more ACLs, please.
I mean, all it took was to get rid of Dan Snyder, though.
Yeah. But, speaking of fields that take ACLs, the New York Jets bringing in Justin Fields as their quarterback to a nice little 2-year deal. It's not a needle mover. I don't think it's, wow, that's a great move. They're in such a great position. I definitely think it's better than rolling out Tyrod Taylor every game. I think, Fields had a nice little 6-game stint with Pittsburgh. I think you need to figure out, for him, you have to figure out what you have in the tank and if you're truly meant to be a starting quarterback in this league. And I think for the Jets, we had them in the mock draft take Cam Ward. And it's tough because they would have to give up a decent bit of assets for that. And it's also, I think, Ward and Sanders, if they were to land either one of them, there's a lot of question marks surrounding a lot of these quarterbacks in the draft this year. I think you figure out what you have in Fields. If he has a great year, then you're okay with that. If he has a really bad year, then all right, next year, you're getting a QB. But I think instead of completely punting on the season, because they do have a lot of talent still on the roster, they still have Wilson, the defense with Quinn Williams, Sauce Gardner, like they have all this. They have positional talent, just not team success. I think they didn't want to waste a year by rolling out Tyrod Taylor or whatever other backup they would bring in to be their starter. I think Fields, with him having that high draft price tag from a few years ago, from him having a little bit of success in Pittsburgh, you figure out what he has, and if it's a wasted year, it sucks. It is what it is. But then all right, we're getting our shiny new toy that is a good quarterback, whether it's Garrett Nussmeier, whether Arch Manning declares for the draft after just 1 year as a starter at Texas, whatever it is. But, the Jets were in a tough spot, and I do like the Fields move.
Yeah, I don't mind the Fields move either. The only thing I'm a little worried about is, Fields in the pocket. Like, he's not the best pocket passer, but he is going to bring another level to that offense with his mobility. But again, it's, can his O-line protect him so he doesn't get killed trying to keep drives alive? But it's going to be interesting to see, what the Jets offense can do.
Yeah. And I think having that nice dual threat in the backfield, especially with Breece Hall, it's going to be interesting to see. Jets aren't done. They have to make more moves. I think they'll possibly bring in a receiver through the draft. I think that wouldn't be the worst thing either. Because Because let's say Garrett Wilson wants entirely too much money, or he says, I'm done with New York, then you have your next guy at receiver. So I could 100% see them trying to make a big splash, whether it's McMillan, whether it's, if Travis Hunter falls or they move up a little bit and take him. But yeah, no, I could 100% see, or even if it's not receiver, you saw how much success Brock Bowers had with the Raiders this past year. It could be a Tyler Warren. You know what I mean? I definitely see them going offensive here, but now having that quarterback at least somewhat figured out, at least for this season, getting another big offensive weapon would be huge for this team. Sticking in that division though, and sticking with a former New York Jet quarterback, Zach Wilson heading to South Beach. What a needle mover.
Yeah.
What a needle mover for the Miami Dolphins, who have done virtually nothing this offseason. Nick Westbrook-Akine, sure. James Daniels to build up their line a little bit. Miami in a year where I feel like McDaniels is on the hot seat. In a year where you're trying to figure out as two of the future, all the headaches with Tyreek Hill, I'm leaving, now I'm not leaving. Just trying to figure out what your team is. You would think they would try to invest and see, all right, is this going to be a winning team? And they just have not done so.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting draft class to watch, especially for that Dolphins team, because they just brought in they're trying to build up that secondary right now. They just brought in the former Lion Melifonwu at safety, which I think is actually a pretty promising move for them. But I'm just curious to see where they lead from then. 'Cause, we saw how, I don't want to say mediocre, but just their whole defense, especially in that backfield, was just kind of okay this season. Even with Tua out, the defense wasn't really doing its job to try and keep that offense in the game. So I'm kind of curious to see what their moves are going to be for this draft coming up. I want them to lean more offense, but they have a lot of issues to fix. And I think Mike McDaniel has his work set out for him, like you just said. He's definitely going to be on that hot seat. I don't want to say he could be the first coach fired if it doesn't go his way, but I could easily see week 8 they start to move on from him.
I can definitely see it for sure. I think the defensive situation for them was tough because Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb were both recovering from late season injuries from the year prior. And also, when you have, 4 games with Jacoby Brissett and Skylar Thompson as your quarterbacks, it's tough to rally around that. And even Tyreek being, kind of banged up for a good chunk of the season, playing through for the most part, but that and him just being the diva he is. So it wasn't a great season for Miami by any means. So like you said, it is very interesting to see, especially saying the bottom feeder of that division from this past year has been very spend happy in the New England Patriots, going out and signing Carlton Davis, giving Milton Williams a huge contract. Harold Landry, they have not been, watching and waiting. I think they're really trying to see, they're trying to not let this just be. They're not trying to wait 3-4 years to have success. They brought in Vrabel, and Vrabel's a guy who will win over the locker room, and he'll rally for the boys. You saw what you had in Drake May, who put together, and there's issues here or there, but he put together a solid showing last year. Draft, they're going to be very aggressive as well. I really like the way that New England's trending, and it doesn't bode well for, the Jets or Miami. A team it doesn't affect is Buffalo. Buffalo giving Josh Allen a fat bag of 6 years, $330 million. As well as, they retained a lot of guys, Khalil Shakir, among them. I believe they're bringing back DeMar Hamlin as well. But they made a couple of moves who I really like. The first one being Josh Palmer. Now, Josh Palmer isn't a wide receiver 1 by any standard, but as a number 3, I think you're okay with that. Now, they did pay him a decent bit, but I do like that they brought him in because Josh Allen kind of had to do it by himself last year. And Josh Palmer isn't, a game changer when it comes to receiver, but he definitely supplements that receiver room. They bring in Joey Bosa. after spending his entire career with the Chargers, which I think is a really nice addition to the edge. I think he's a cheaper option. And he played a little bit of a different position than Von Miller, but I think it is a nice addition to that line for what would be cheaper than what Von Miller is probably going to demand. I really like the moves Buffalo has made, at least in the early going of this offseason.
Yeah, I agree completely, wholeheartedly. I think Josh Palmer is the fit that they needed this past season. I know with one of the big shockers for me, and I don't know how you guys feel about this personally, but with Curtis Samuel this past season, I expected a lot more out of him, especially moving to that Buffalo side. I hope Josh Palmer can fit into what that Curtis Samuel was supposed to be, like that role as a wide receiver, borderline 2, but definitely 3. I think it's just a better addition for Josh Allen. I think he's going to get a lot more out of him this season. Buffalo is never going away. They found their way. It sucks that they lost what's his name, Mac Hollins, Mr. Bear himself. I saw that they let him go, which was a bit of a stinker. He wasn't the best player, but he definitely was. I could imagine he was a pretty famous locker room guy in there. So that wide receiver room, I think, only has gotten better, which is awesome to see.
And also to mention that Josh Allen signed the biggest contract for a guaranteed in NFL history.
As we did mention, yes, sir.
They're well deserved for him.
100%. I mean, especially after this past season. And past years, he had more help offensively. This year, it was kind of Josh Allen alone. James Cook had a good year, and, Kincaid was there. They brought in Amari Cooper, who existed. But, it was really Josh Allen shouldering the load for this team and really driving this team to the postseason. And I absolutely love that he got that bag because it's 100% deserved. I'm interested to see where Green Bay goes. There is rumors that they could move on from Jair Alexander. Again, don't know how much traction that'll have. But that has been a rumor that has been circulating. They've only made a couple of moves. Price tag wise, pretty hefty. Aaron Banks on a 4-year, $77 million deal, and Nate Hobbs on a $48 million deal across 4 seasons. I'm very curious on where Green Bay can go because they desperately need a lead receiver. So maybe there's someone who lands Cooper Kupp, and I don't think Kupp is a top wide receiver one anymore, but I think in that offense he is 100% the one, and he definitely helps out guys like Christian Watts and guys like Jaden Reed, who aren't, in my eyes at least, true wide receiver ones, but they're good wide receiver twos. I think those guys are 2A and 2B, and behind Kupp would, they thrive because Kupp would take so much attention offensively. I just really want to see, even if it's not Kupp, even if it's, we mentioned Diggs or Cooper or Allen, and yes, there's more name value than maybe what there is talent-wise, but I think Green Bay desperately needs it.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking for Cooper Kupp, I read something that I believe if he gets released, he's curious about the Patriots. So Drake May and Cooper Kupp would be a very nice gift for Drake May.
I definitely would like to see that as well. Just because their receiver room isn't unbelievably stacked, especially if they are able to bring in Kupp and then maybe draft a top receiver as well. Because then you give May 2 excellent weapons from day one. I mean, you enter this new season with 2 really good options for May to prove how much he has. Because again, I believe it was 12 games, 11 or 12 games. But you saw some of the success that he had. You also saw some of the flaws. But I think you saw the success that he had with no real receiving weapons. Give him 2 talented guys and see what he can do, because I think you're going to find out exactly what he has. Just kind of looking around the rest of the NFL. The Bears made the big move for Joe Thuney. DeAndre Hopkins going to the Ravens, which if this was 3 years ago, I'd be ecstatic. But at this point, who cares? I don't know. There's been a lot of moves. There's still going to be a ton of moves the rest of this offseason. I guess we'll go around the board. If you had to pick your best offseason move, bias removed, of course, but if you had to pick your best offensive move or your best offseason move, what would it be? Big Z, we'll start with you.
I'm trying to think. I'm frantically trying to remind myself of everything that's happened at the moment. I think that honestly, I think Charvarius Ward of the Colts is up there. Him and Bynum, just because that secondary is was real bad. And I think those guys both kind of put them back in that Tyler Warren conversation in the draft. I think Laramie Tunsil as well to the Commanders is absolutely huge. Obviously, the penalties are not the best, but he is phenomenal at protecting the quarterback. Outside of that, the Broncos did a lot. Dre Greenlaw, I think, will be really good for them. They're just kind of taking the whole 49ers defense with the safety as well. But, yeah.
All right. Corey?
Well, I guess going back, I mean, Devontae Adams is one of my favorite because, he's playing on a Jets team where it just went absolutely nowhere. And I think now with the Rams, he's really getting everything that he wants. He's got a really good quarterback in Stafford. He's got, Puka Nacua. And he even said he wanted to play on the West Coast. So, I mean, I think it just is the perfect package. And I also think the winners are the Seahawks too, like with Sam Darnold, because they really needed a quarterback, and there's still areas that they need to, fill the gaps in. But I think the Seahawks are moving in the right direction. Still not, they're not going to blow anybody away. But I think the biggest win was definitely Devontae Adams and the Rams.
Oh, Gordon?
All right, this is 100% biased, and we have not mentioned his name yet. But so we talked about Carlton Davis leaving the Lions, and I saw that coming, unfortunately. And I remember seeing all the people that I follow on Twitter. They were all like, "Man, Brad Holmes got to act quickly. Like we need to replace this corner. Like this is not going to end up well." And then the Lions go out and sign arguably better than Carlton Davis, even though Carlton Davis had a fantastic season. We go out and get DJ Reed. I know John is absolutely furious. I am unbelievably over the moon. I think 3-year, $48 million is awesome. If we could have gotten Carlton Davis for that exact amount, but I believe he got signed to the Patriots for 3 years, $60 million. Like
that was 60. Yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't. Unfortunately, we can't afford to pay that salary. It'd been nice to keep him back, but that move is just awesome. That thing has me over the moon. I'm really excited to watch that secondary continue to grow. It's a little bit annoying constantly going through these almost veteran corners with C.J. Gardner-Johnson at first, and then Carlton Davis, and now DJ Reed. It might be a little bit annoying for those younger guys who are in the locker room, but I mean, it's bringing more experience to the team. I couldn't be more happy about it. It's nice to constantly have those changing viewpoints, especially in the backfield.
Oh, yeah. Soren, who is your biggest? What's the biggest move you think from this offseason?
I think the most surprising move I kind of saw that was kind of really a head scratcher for me was the Geno Smith going to the Raiders. I felt like that was kind of a pretty interesting situation over there, and I think with Seattle just getting their quarterback done, I think that kind of just set Oakland up Las Vegas, for success, essentially.
I definitely think that's huge for sure. I think there was no true direction on what they would do. I think they were too late to grab one of the top quarterbacks in this draft. Obviously, Russ was circulating, but even still, there wasn't a whole lot of traction behind any of the rumors, and you knew you couldn't really roll back out there with AOC, Gardner Minshew, Desmond Ridder, that combination. So I do like the Geno Smith move, at least in the short term. Long term, I think Vegas needs to make some bigger decisions when it comes to quarterback. But I definitely think, at least for this season, it's the right move to make, especially saying they didn't give up too much for it. My biggest move this offseason, it's got to be DK Metcalf, man. I mean, as much as there is the drama that comes with him, and as much as the standard is the standard in Pittsburgh, Bringing in a talent like that to pair with Pickens, and on top of that, not even just as a talent-wise, but Pickens and DK are going to build a good rapport with each other. It sets up whoever they bring in. It makes the quarterback position a little bit more appealing for free agents or whoever ends up getting drafted there in the future. Having two talented receivers, and I don't think Pickens has ever been a true wide receiver one. I think we can kind of agree on that. He's been on that borderline. I think he's been a wide receiver two, trying to be a one, but I don't think he's ever gotten there. By bringing in Metcalf, it's going to bring the best out of Pickens, or at least that's the hope. That's what it looks like. Now, again, receivers are only as good as their quarterback is. So if they, don't do anything and they roll out Skylar Thompson, well, then it's not going to be a great year. But if they bring in Rodgers or they bring back Russ, or even if they they find a way to bring in one of the quarterbacks in the draft, I think you're unbelievably happy with it. And I think, Metcalf and Pickens are going to be the next big duo in Pittsburgh. Obviously with fisticuffs here or there, helmets being ripped off, but that's coming to be expected when you play in the AFC North.
Mm-hmm.
But, boys, do we got anything before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, I got one quick thing. I got to say, the one move that kind of caught me the most surprised by was definitely not a big one, but Kenny Pickett to the Browns.
Yeah.
I'm really, really interested to see how that first game in Pittsburgh goes. I'm curious to see if the city boos him or not, or just
probably.
I just want to know what's going through his mind right now. You're talking about a dude who went to Pitt, got drafted by the Steelers, was probably from the moment he walked into that Pitt University locker room was shown to hate the city of Cleveland to some extent. I wonder obviously he's still getting paid to play football, but that's always going to live in the back of his mind. I know, and he's a Philly dude. He was born and raised in Philly. He finally got to play for his favorite team growing up. Won a Super Bowl, and then goes to literally what should be his arch rival, if not the Dallas Cowboys. Besides going to Dallas, that might be the worst move for him to possibly go to. But
I think the thought is because Watson retore his Achilles, he will get day one opportunity to start. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the mentality of, he does not. No one ever wants to play in Cleveland. Let's be completely honest. No one has ever said, "Yeah, babe, let's move to Cleveland. That's where I want to finish my career. That's where I want to play my career at." But I think with him trying to get a starting role back in the NFL, he got a year to sit in a good offense, possibly figure some things out. He's going to Cleveland where it's not a good offense. There's not weapons. There's barely offensive line. There's barely fans who are proud of their team. But it is a starting opportunity nonetheless. And I think, once Watson comes back, he'll be benched. But if he can go out there and have a good 8 or 9 game showing, however long it is, till Watson returns, it gets him a contract somewhere, which I think is what he is looking for at this point.
Yeah.
Apart from Kenny Pickett, do we have anything before we wrap this one up?
It does look like the Steelers are back to being the favorites for Aaron Rodgers, who is not scheduled to be on the Pat McAfee show today.
Ooh,
surprisingly. So
making moves, making $1 million moves. It's the right move for Pittsburgh, but we got to see if he's going to end up landing there.
I hope, man.
He might have to go on another retreat. We don't know. Oh, no, that locker room's going to be fun with all the drama from Rodgers and Pickens and DK.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Yeah.
If it happens, it'll be fun. Just no Jameis and no Anthony Richardson, please.
At least Twitter will be entertaining for you guys.
Yeah, my phone's been blowing up all day.
Are any of you guys else excited to watch Daniel Jones on the Colts? I really hope he turns out to be the starter.
Yes.
I really want him to have so much success, dude. I think it'd be awesome. Obviously, I think all of us here are not the biggest Anthony Richardson fans, but I think that would be the giant nail on the coffin for anyone who still has some sort of faith in him. If losing out to Daniel Jones, who knows? Maybe Daniel Jones leads the Colts on a nice playoff run this year. Bring back that old 2018, 2019 Daniel Jones.
God no. All right, boys.
I say we call it here. That's going to do it for this edition of He Knows Ball. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all that. Usually Corey's on my left and Cam's on my right, but we're all, online. John's in a hole somewhere for all we know. But as per usual, I'm Vincent Goldschmidt. Stay balling straight.